Have you ever noticed that when Jesus talks about the kingdom, he uses simple things? Mustard seeds, leaven, a marriage table, a field. As I read this text, pay attention to two things. The two images, the simple images that Jesus uses to proclaim the kingdom today of salt and light. And then the second part of this text. Notice how stern Matthew's Jesus can be. Matthew is dealing with some moral and ethical issues in his community that forces Jesus to become tough. So listen to the toughness. You are the salt of the earth. But if salt has lost its taste, how shall its saltness be restored? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trodden underfoot. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hid, nor do people light a lamp and put it under a bushel, but on a stand. And it gives light to all the house. Let your light so shine before others that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. Don't think that I have come to abolish the law and the prophets. I've not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. Truly, I tell you, till heaven and earth pass away, not an iota, not a dot will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Pretty stern. Whoever then relaxes one of the least of these commandments and teaches people so to do the same shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and the Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Oof. The gospel of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please be seated. Please join me in a word of prayer. Let the words of my mouth and the meditations of our hearts be acceptable to you, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Tom Long, most of you have heard me talk about Tom Long, used to be the professor of preaching at Candler School of Theology here in Atlanta, and was probably one of the 2 or 3 best preachers I have ever heard. In his commentary on this text, Long once said these words, and I quote, that the Church of Jesus Christ is a colony of the kingdom of heaven in an alien world. Do you believe that? That out there, success is measured by how much you have, and in here, success is measured by how much you have given away. That out there, they're building walls to protect the good people from the bad people, to segregate the innies from the outies, whereas in here, all we have is a communion rail where people of all shapes and sizes and colors and kinds and creeds of people are invited to come, irregardless of their political persuasion or their economic status. Out there, it's survival of the fittest. Only the strong survive. In here, the guest list includes the poor, the meek, the blind, and the lame. The church is a colony of the kingdom in an alien world. And where the church gets into trouble is to try and be anything but that. When it makes its qualifications for membership based on race or economics or sexual preference. When what is in my best interest completely overshadows what's in your best interest. When instead of being an alternative to the culture, it becomes the culture. And I know churches, a lot of churches, ladies and gentlemen, where life inside their walls is not a whole lot different than life outside their walls, and you know those churches too. Let's be clear. 2,000 years after Jesus gathered those first disciples on that mountain, he gathers us together on this mountain, and he says again, you are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. Let your light shine. Put it on a lampstand. And you know as well as I do that sometimes that gets risky. Sometimes standing up and being counted is a whole lot more difficult than sitting down and shutting up. Sometimes when you advocate for the poor and the hungry and the blind, it will alienate you from people who are close to you. Sometimes being a good Samaritan forces us to oppose systems that have been oppressing God and God's people for years. Sometimes standing up for what's right is not an easy thing to do. I'm going to tell you a great story. This is a true story. It happened not too long ago to members of our congregation, and I beg your indulgence. You're going to have to I apologize for my French. This couple was having dinner not too long ago, and there was a nice, simple conversation at dinner. And then all of a sudden, one of them turns to the other, and you just like being a shit disturber. Sometimes it comes down to that. Have you known anybody better at that than Jesus? You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world. I think Jesus uses those images on purpose. It doesn't take much salt to flavor a meatloaf, even if you don't like meatloaf. And it doesn't take much light to invade a sea of darkness. Sometimes it doesn't take much. You heard this already this morning for the last 7 months. Members of this congregation have been involved in refugee resettlement. The Abazed family from Syria. Now I know that is a political hot potato. And I know there are good, solid Christians on both sides of that issue. But I also know that because of quiet, unassuming help from unnamed lay people, there are 6 people whose lives have been either saved or changed. You are salt of the earth. Family Legacy is an international organization that cares for and supports orphans and at-risk kids in Zambia. The person behind me on the screen is named Kennedy. He's 15 years of age. He goes to the 6th grade. In a country where the illiteracy rate is approaching 40%, Kennedy is in school, due in large measure to the financial gift of members of this congregation who have made it possible for him to have a uniform and school supplies and books. And the money that has taken is not a whole lot more than the money that you and I will spend for pizza on a Friday night. You are the light of the world. To be a Christian means to be salt and light. It means to give and care and live the way Jesus gives and cares and lives. It means to do the little things in here and to do the little things out there to build the kingdom. Because as Jesus says, Even a little bit of salt can flavor a meal, and even a little bit of light can invade a darkness. We are in the middle, as all of you know, with Catch the Bug. Giving is contagious. It's our stewardship campaign, but it is a whole lot more than that. It is an invitation for every single person in the room to be salt and light. Every dollar you give, every minute you spend, every kindness you share matters. Every little thing that you do in here and out there is salt and light. And of all the congregations that I've ever known, this congregation knows that best. And it is my honor and privilege to be a part of you in that effort. My prayer is that you and I together will be salt and light, a colony of the kingdom in an alien world.